Dr. Wendy C, homeschool specialist, as well as a wellness specialist. I wanted to bring the whole family in this morning to discuss homeschooling in the pandemic as Black people, people in general, but also how do we handle our kids in this process? Good morning to all of you. And Dr. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. If you would, just tell us a little bit about what you do and tell us about homeschooling for you during this pandemic.
Absolutely. So a little bit about me. I have been homeschooling for a little over 6 years now. So started before the pandemic when it was not so cool to homeschool and it was not a big push and a necessity. And I tease all the time and say back when it was a little bit like Little House on the Prairie, when I said I homeschool and people, oh, that's very weird. How do you do that? How are your kids ever going to survive type of deal? So through just going through the path myself, and along the way, I picked up on consulting. So as a homeschool consultant and a wellness coach, coupled together, just helping families navigate the process from beginning, whether they're trying to decide if they want to homeschool, if homeschool is right for them, because it's quite popular now. And it's caught on since the pandemic, which I think is an amazing thing as we get in the nitty gritty and talk about the effects of homeschool and on our children and what that can do for them, not just educationally, but emotionally too. Side note. But so in the midst of it, the wellness piece came as homeschooling. You can be overwhelmed, be tired. I went through that whole path and said, wait a minute, there's got to be some way to navigate this and to really understand and to do this better, feeling better, looking better, spiritually better, coming to work, so to speak, but to begin school each day with my own zen and my own happiness and not getting burned out. Because as parents, we have a million hats we're wearing, right? Not only the parents, so husband, wife, confidant to someone. Most of us are still working full time or part time in some capacity or doing our own thing. So just combating the day, the weeks, and the months, and still maintaining and being successful as a homeschool parent is where the wellness piece came into.
Pastor Galloway, I want to bring you into the conversation. You and I have talked extensively about homeschooling in the pandemic. But I also had a chance, Dr. Wendy, we spoke on the phone prior to you coming on. Pastor Galloway, the emotional development, the growth that we saw in our kids, particularly our son, really made me that much more of an advocate for homeschooling. What is it about that care? I guess it's self-evident, but speak to it for us.
Well, we took the approach of, and we talked about this before. We took the Galloway Roadshow. So in the height of the pandemic, one of the things that we do is we stay outside. So we hooked up a pop-up camper and we took the kids on the road, and they got to see the country. They got to see the road. We stayed, to ourselves in terms of safety, in terms of COVID. But what we were able to see is that there was space to deal with their ebbs and flows that aren't part of a factory space. And I've worked in education for 15 years. And so I understood, the challenge that a teacher might want to do what the kid actually calls for socially, emotionally in that particular moment. We were able to navigate that in a way that was full, that met our kids where they were. And in doing so, not only did they get to make sense of the world, but now our kids are back into the school system, and what we're getting from the teachers and we're getting from our kids is this kind of mourning of the time that we got to spend and deal with things at their pace versus the pace of the school district. So I also see this, as we talked last time we had you on, Dr. Wendy, is I also support an organization that services homeschool parents. So a lot of homeschool parents used our out of school time center at the African Wellness Center and had this very similar thing. Their kids checked out of a pace that allowed them to move at their pace. And we saw in the data quickly that our data was the exact opposite of the school district in terms of behavior, in terms of social wellness, and in terms of hopeful aspirations for kids. Kids are talking about aspirations in our space that they're not in the school setting space. And so those are some of the differences that we saw.
Yeah. It's kind of awkward, but I want to ask Jada a question sitting next to me here, especially with Dr. Wendy here. Balance. Like, one of the biggest challenges we have is balancing schedules, professionalism with the kind of time it takes. Just speak about that.
So we were kind of pushed into, homeschooling. We had thought about what Ben alluded to as far as the emotional aspect of our kids, especially our son, was something that we noticed a change in his demeanor and how he interacted. And we just questioned, are we equipped to do this as parents? Should we do this as parents? Would we cause more harm to them than good? But then the pandemic came around and it was kind of like, well, here we are.
Right. Yeah.
And that first year, I will say it was a struggle because my idea of homeschooling was the school system, but at home.
Yeah.
So we would go from 8 to 2, trying to figure out. And then I was trying to do this one-shot curriculum that had everything in it. But what I found is my daughter is an audio learner. My son is a kinetic learner. And so once I tapped into that, and we had to do some deschooling for myself because I came up in the public school system. But then they had, a few years in the public school system. So they were used to their routine. So with I'm just like,
we're just getting it. And she's right. Her. It's a lot. Most of it falls on her.
We have an adjunct.
Ooh, that look.
This is our adjunct professor.
I fly in for lessons. Like I taught the preamble to the Constitution, and then I went to work. Go ahead, Jade. I'm sorry.
But it's finding that balance and understanding that I am their mom. I've been blessed to be there for them, to nurture them, not only mentally but also emotionally, and it honestly kind of helped me with some things as far as tapping into who I am and what I want to represent and allowing them to be free. Yeah. So I said all that to ask this question to Wendy, like, how long did it take you to find your balance? Do you have your balance or does it ebb and flow? What are your thoughts on that?
So it definitely ebbs and flows. And I was laughing and wanted to chime in when you said the deschooling or the unschooling, as some people call it. We have to go through that process. We have to mourn, so to speak, what that traditional setting looks like for us, right? And so I'm no different. When I started homeschooling, it wasn't something that I thought I would be doing. If you asked me 10 years ago, hey, told me you're going to be homeschooling in 10 years, and I would say, no, this is not my path. That's not what I went to school for. Never had I thought that I would leave my career to be at home, in homeschool. And I'm laughing at Benjamin. My husband's the principal too. When something's going wrong at school and I have to look to him, and sometimes he taps in and does a little reading, but the principal is a role that we give him.
I just got it. But, I thought he was a principal for real. I just got it. I'm sorry. I'm slow. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Wendy. It's so true.
So, so back to the deschooling process, coming in, when I decided to pull my son out of school, he was first. I have a son and a daughter, and school was just not working out for him. And we said, this is not the right thing. He needs to individualize learning. And it was one of his teachers, actually, that gave me the push that said, I think this would be a good choice for him, and I think you should start exploring it. And again, it wasn't really common back when we started, but I started to explore it nevertheless. I went to this thrift store searching for a desk because, we went to public school, graduated from public school. And I said, you need a desk, a chair, and a whiteboard, right? And we get up at this time and this is what we do. So the same, right? And we learned that we have that freedom We have the freedom to sit and read now to our children during the day. We have the freedom to map out math. So it didn't come right away. I said all that to say, it wasn't right away that I realized that, the school at home doesn't mean bringing the school, into my house, whatever program that you're doing. It's giving them that individual, that, coaxing, that encouragement, that pouring into. It got to a point in our second year where we were just doing a lot of museums. We were doing a lot of museums to explore and put that into our curriculum. Yes. And then the next year we're going shopping together, whether it's grocery shopping to the stores. We're having a lot of people interaction to get that social. And then our third year was like, okay, let's add in some activities. So families that I consult with, whether they're beginning in those stages or the end, right now, I have a couple families that I'm helping with SATs and what does college entrance look like and preparing for that. So it changes. I think finding my balance is different every year, to answer your question. This year, I have a middle schooler and a high schooler, but both of them are taking college classes right now. Wow. Nice. And both of them are exploring, and just like I would have never thought we would have been here. And developmentally, and psychologically, as well as emotionally, giving them the confidence and that added on patience, as you're there with them, Jada, to be able to walk alongside them and learn. Like some of the things I just never would imagine. Like it's me going back to school all over again to a certain point. And just the benefits of learning as a mom. I have to learn to take off that mom hat, so to speak. It's not 8 to 2, and being teacher and those roles switching. So that's probably a hard balance that I don't think ever goes away when you're working on it. You're always going to be working on that part.
Well, Dr. Wendy, please go ahead.
Dr. Wendy, this is Dwayne.
The voice of God, by the way. That's Dwayne. That's our technical director, Dwayne, in the background.
Sorry, Dr. Wendy, you don't see me, but everybody hears me.
Okay.
So my question is it sounded like in your last example, just about going out and teaching a lot of life skills. But how does that transition into like having the, because when it comes time for college and things like that, they're looking at your transcripts and stuff like that. But how do those life skills incorporate into actual, like what schools are looking for? How does that correlate?
That's a good question. That's a great question.
Because I feel like the life skills to me sometimes are a lot more important than a lot of the stuff you're gonna learn in a book.
I feel that.
Absolutely.
Hands-on, absolutely. So when it comes to putting them on transcripts and you're doing descriptions of things, you always want to get your kids involved in the community, like the pastor said, that they go out and network with different communities, community programs, get involvement in either your Boys and Girls Club, YMCAs, and just be a part of things that are going to contribute to those transcripts that you have. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. That's on our side. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, you just want to be able to build them up, right? In school and in some states, I know all states are different. Some states heavily support homeschool students with the after-school activities, with the extracurriculars. So in some states, you can enroll your students in if you're wanting to take the Spanish class or the Latin class or the French class, because that's needed in most college transcripts, that you need 2 years of a foreign language. So you definitely want to seek out what the district has for you. But I want to just put a note that all districts, all states are not the same. And that's kind of a divide that I know me and Benjamin talked about yesterday or the other day when we spoke, that, from state to state is different and requirements are are different from homeschooling. So you really need to be mindful of that. And the networking, that's where the networking piece comes in as a homeschool parent, that you're reaching out and seeing and talking to others or finding consultants to see what your resources are and how to navigate that best to get your child, to the next level after you graduate them into what college or what field or what technical school that they want to go into. And really, homeschooling is such a great platform to start, navigating that for them, and you have the time during the day, and a lot of programs are during the day for homeschoolers.
I want to underscore that.
Go ahead, doctor.
No, I love seeing you and your wife on the screen. So go ahead.
Y'all are pouring into us.
And you caught my wife on a hot mic moment. I was behind the scenes picking with her about something, and she said, "I don't like you." And we interrupted. So this is probably the place where we should sign off, Dr. Wendy, before I get pinched on my side. Dr. Wendy, tell everybody how they can get up with you and not only support your work, but find out more about your work.
Absolutely. So please visit my website, drwendyc.com. You can message me on there and also on any social media handles at dr.wendyc. And you can contact and find me there.
Absolutely. Pastor Galloway, before, I know we were getting ready to get out of here, but I know it sounded like you had a comment or a question before we get out of here. If not, I'd like for you to hang out for a few more minutes. Do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I just wanted to underscore what Dr. Wendy said. And in addition, in terms of the collegiate get, one of the things that we're finding, especially out of Minnesota, is that the level of rate of remediation that's required by students, even when they do the full advanced placement track and all that stuff, is pretty high, because organizations are getting kids out of college who only know one method of schooling, and that is rote regurgitation of information. And homeschooling doesn't, children have a much more robust critical thinking palette. And so, when I can underscore that when we are looking at Old Faithful and we're in the middle of Yellowstone and our pop-up camper, and my kids find and piece together a Wi-Fi signal enough to turn in an assignment in the hybrid model that we have in Minnesota that supports, it meets us where we are. And that was taking away from what is the most learning, to the point where his hybrid teachers were like, no. Turn that in tomorrow. You go explore what's happening there, because we wish we could be doing that with our kids.
That's right.
And that's the kind of critical thinking that they are able to do that we just weren't seeing them being able to do in the school system.
Dr. Wendy, we have to have you back when we get a chance. We are really supportive of homeschooling, because we got pushed into it because of the pandemic, but we absolutely know that it is better for our children. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
I love that. Thank you.